Hi everyone, my name is Yakshini Priya Serju and welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little different from my regular videos, my regular art videos. I'm going to be showing you today the products that I use for the different mediums that I use in my artworks, whether it's drawings, paintings. I'm going to show you all the stuff that I use, and just a disclaimer that all of these products I have purchased myself and I'm not sponsored in any way by any brand or any product. All of the products I've bought are products that I've over the years of painting and drawing, I've found them, tried them out, and I found these particular ones that actually are suitable for my style of drawing and painting and the techniques I use. So now I'm not sponsored in any way, and you don't need to have all these products. This is just to give you an idea of what I use, but I will be mentioning some of the products where I'm using more expensive professional quality supplies, where you can get a cheaper version of it which is more affordable, and you can, especially if you're starting off with art, it can be helpful to you to start off with a simpler or cheaper option than going for the most expensive stuff that you may see some of the products that I've got in my that I use in my drawings. So yes, let's get into the video. Okay, so starting off, I'm going to start off with graphite. Now for my graphite drawings, or for any drawing or sketches, these are the things I use for my sketches. So I start off with a HB pencil. It can be any brand. I don't have a particular brand in mind, as long as it's a graphite pencil and it's a HB. This one is a 2B that I've got of the Staedtler one, but this one is actually, my HB is really little and really tiny, so I'm using the, I've changed now to the Faber-Castell. This is the Gold Faber HB pencil. So these are the pencils that I use for my initial sketches, for graphite drawings, or for any sketch that I don't mind having the graphite line show through, then these are the ones I use. Can be any regular graphite pencil, but I see the Staedtler and the Faber-Castell Gold Faber, these two work really well, and as well as erase well as well, depending on how much pressure you apply to the paper, but definitely these are the two I use. I also use, in cases where I want the sketch or initial sketch of my drawing or painting, whatever it is, my initial sketch, if I don't want it to show any harsh graphite lines through, especially if I'm doing watercolor drawing, for example, or watercolor painting, and if I don't want any of the lines to show through when I'm done, I use a Faber-Castell graphite aquarelle pencil. This is not the only brand that you get a lot of other brands. I also have got the Derwent one as well. These are water-soluble graphite pencils, so if you need to do a drawing where you don't want a harsh graphite lines to show, definitely a water-soluble graphite pencil. Doesn't matter the brand, but the ones I'm using are Faber-Castell, and I also have got the Derwent one, but this is the one I'm currently using. So those are for the initial sketches. Then also for my full pieces in graphite, I actually use the Derwent graphic set. This is an old tin, so it has changed, but this is the 24 set. It goes from very soft leads to a very hard lead. So these are the ones I use, but I don't use much of the hard leads. I use more soft leads. So you'll see with the new packaging of this one, I've gotten the set from 9B to H. It's a much smaller set, and it's more of the softer leads. Then it does have an H and an F in it included, but it is the softer leads, which is mostly what I use for my full graphite pieces that I do, or my graphite drawings. Another graphite pencil that I tried out recently was the Staedtler Mars Lumograph black graphite pencils. These are really dark pencils, so if you're looking for something that's going to give you really dark lines and dark coverage, these are definitely pencils that I would recommend. They're much darker than your average graphite pencils, so definitely you can give these a try if you're looking for something that's really dark. And then also another pencil that I've given a try once or twice, but I haven't used it as much as I'd like to use it. That's the Derwent graphite tint pencils. Now basically what these are, they are graphite pencils with a hint of color. So when you're using them, you have very subtle color, but you will have, obviously you activate it with water. So once you draw out your entire drawing, you can use it sort of like the ink tints in a way. So then you just use a brush with a little bit of water, and then you activate the color, and it brings out those rich, vibrant colors that combined with your graphite. So it's not a solid, for example, the blues and the browns and greens. There's very earthy colors in this set, but you don't get that really shocking colors, but you get a hint of color, so you can create your drawings that have a graphite look but got color as well, but a subtle color. So yeah, you can see this could be a different tin now as well. This is an older tin. the tin most likely has changed as well, but this was the one that I've got. Now when it comes to charcoal, so let's go to my charcoal supplies. Now the charcoal pencils that I use is actually the Derwent charcoal pencils. These are very nice to get really detailed, like when I'm doing my wildlife, if I want to get the fur lines and everything. They've got different sizes, it's got or different darkness, it's got light, medium and dark colors of the pencils inside, as well as a white. So you can basically use the set only and you can create an entire piece. But I do have, additional to this, I do have also, sorry, the packaging is a bit torn, but I do have the Derwent charcoal 6 sticks. These also have got medium, dark and light, but these are the sticks that I use as well for larger coverage, or if you want to cover a background, then these are definitely pencils to use. Sorry, these are falling out of their case, but these are the pencils. These are the sticks for large coverage of areas. Now when I'm using these, I also just have extra white charcoal pencils in case you want to bring out those real bright highlights. Then I do have these white charcoal pencils. These are the Montmartre white charcoal pencils. Any brand of charcoal pencils, white and all the darker ones can work. You don't have to have these particular brands, but this is the one that I got in case I need extra charcoal or extra white charcoal. Now the sharpener I use is a regular sharpener. This is it says it's a mapped sharpener. Now I use this one for the actual sharpening of my charcoal pencils. I'm using the larger hole just to sharpen the pencils. I see this works very well because I can watch how I'm sharpening it and I can actually see the nib, so I'm able to see if it's sharpened enough without breaking the nib or even removing too much of the wood. So that's definitely the sharpener I use for my pencils. This set does come with a sharpener, but I don't use it. The pencils don't really fit into the sharpener well, so I prefer to use this one. And then also when I'm working with my charcoal, I have this little brush. This is an old brush that I used to use for painting. It's still in good condition. The edge, I just need the edge, and you can see it's got a small edge, but it's fanned out. So what I like to do with this is I use it to blend the charcoal. You'll see in some of my charcoal portrait videos, I use this I apply the charcoal and then for the base layers, and then I use this to spread the charcoal around. As you're spreading the charcoal and the dust of the charcoal, basically you're spreading it around, then you just use this to blend it out, spread it around, and even lift up certain areas where you got excess charcoal. It can also be used for that. So that's my charcoal supplies and my graphite supplies. Okay, another thing to use with your charcoal, which is something I actually forgot to mention this. This was with my charcoals, but this tin I forgot to show you. This is a Derwent tinted charcoal set of 24 colors. Now, these pencils basically are similar to the graphite tint. These ones are you just use the pencil over, and then you obviously can get a bit of more texture. These do not get activated with water. These are used dry, but they do have a hint of a subtle color, more natural tones. There's lots of grays, browns and greens with a hint of green, but it's a very subtle color. So you can get some really good charcoal portrait, like for example this portrait. As I said, this is the old tins, but it may be changed now. But these portraits, you can do a portrait, you can do a wildlife, anything like that, even a landscape. It gives you a hint of color to your charcoal drawing. So this is also a handy pencils to have, also not so expensive. So it's nice to have it as an add-on to your, basically your art collection. Okay, so the color pencils I use a lot. These are the pencils that I'm mostly using now. These are the Derwent Lightfast color pencils. It's a set of 72. I use this mostly for all my color pencil drawings, combined with others as well and on its own. These are all Lightfast pencils, as well as they are oil based. So this is the one set that I use. The other one I use a lot are my Faber-Castell polychromos. Now this is a set of 120 colors, and I use this a lot for my color pencil drawings. Also, they are oil-based pencils. You can use them in conjunction with the Derwent pencils, or you can use them alone on their own. But these are definitely my two pencils, color pencils that I love the most: the Derwent Lightfast and the Faber-Castell polychromos. The other one that I really enjoy using are the Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils. This is a set of 76. These pencils are quite expensive, so I don't use them as much as the others, but they really go down very smoothly on the paper. They have a very smooth application, and they go on quite they cover the paper very nicely as we're working with them. So I definitely, this is also one that I really enjoy working, but because of their price, I don't use them as much as I should. But like I said, you can combine colors from the Luminance set with the Faber-Castell Polychromos and the Derwent Lightfast. They fine. They all work well together. You can combine them, but they all are definitely the top 3 pencils that I use for my drawings. Another one that I do also use when I'm doing wildlife drawings or any studies, this is the Derwent Drawing Pencil set of 24. And these pencils are good to use for wildlife, doing landscapes. I have done some animal portraits or wildlife portraits with these. They also go down very well, and the Chinese white is a very opaque white on the set, so it really can be used to add a lot of highlights or keep areas white. You can apply it down before applying the other colors over. So definitely this is another set that I would recommend to anyone wanting to do more nature studies or wildlife portraits. So another pencil that I like to use, I used to use especially a lot before I started with these pencils or with the Faber-Castell pencil Polychromos, was the Lyra Rembrandt Polycolor pencils. This is a set of 72, and these pencils are also very, very good pencils. They apply very well. They can be blended very well. I do use, if I want to cover the white of the paper properly, I do use a odorless mineral artist mineral spirits to blend my drawings or my color pencil drawings, just so that I can cover the truth of the paper and get even blending and even coverage. So these as well can be used just as I've used the others with the other 3 pencils as well, or pencil sets. This one also is a really good pencil. I've used it for wildlife portraits, and it definitely, even for some floral portraits or for floral drawings, and it really, really looks really good, these pencils as well. And they're much cheaper than the other 3 I showed you. Compared to that, these are at a more affordable range for some people. So definitely this is, if you're looking for higher grade pencils that are not as expensive as the Polychromos, the Lightfast, or the Derwent Lightfast, or the Rembrandt, the Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils, then definitely you can give these a try. These will really be worth your money. Okay, so the other pencils I used, and this is a long time ago. These pencils, I bought them maybe over 10 years ago. They're very, very, very old. The case also may have changed the picture. These are the Derwent Artist pencils, the 72 set. Now these pencils are really, really good pencils to start off with. They're much more affordable than the previous brands I've showed you. They are really good pencils to start off with. The only thing I will mention, they got a good range of colors, but you need to make sure the paper that you're using can handle multiple layers, especially if you don't want it to look too light. The color, you need to add multiple layers. Even with some of my oil-based pencils, these are wax-based, the Derwent Artist, but even with the oil-based pencils, I do add multiple layers for my drawings to get them to look more vibrant and saturated. But if you want to use the Artist, they are lighter than those previous ones, the previous brands that I showed you, because they are wax-based as well, and they do go on light, and multiple layers will bring out the more brighter colors. So definitely use a paper that can handle multiple layers of pencil when you're using these. But these are perfect to start with. I started with them years ago, and I haven't used them for a long time. But when I was working with them, I enjoyed working with them, and I've created some really good pieces with these as well. So definitely I would recommend, if you're looking for a cheaper pencil to start off with, or even if you're already drawing and you want just something that's more affordable, if the others are out of your budget, definitely these are pencils that you can give a try. These have good coverage as well. They're wax based. You can blend them as well. So the colors are also a range of colors. 72 colors is a lot of colors, so you're not going to run short of a particular color. So definitely these are pencils to give a try. The other one that I've got as well at that time, also old tin, over 10 years old I think. So these are the Derwent Studio pencils. They are also the 72 set. This is identical to the Artist pencils. There's no difference between the two. The only thing that's difference between the Artist pencils and the Studio is that the Studio leads are much harder than the Artist leads. And the reason for that is that the Studio is more suitable for fine details, creating textures, outlines, or getting those really, really hard edges on certain things. these are definitely worth it to use in conjunction with the artist. You don't have to have both sets. You can have one or the other. But preferably I would say get the artist pencils. But if you have also affordable pencils, these are just as the price range is the same for the two of them more or less. So you can get the studio pencils just to add or basically complement your artist pencils, just to create those fine details or some textures into your drawings done with the artist pencils. But basically the same colors, only thing the lead of the studio are much harder. So those are the two I started off with. Then I moved on to the Derwent Color Soft. And these pencils are really very, very soft. They say color soft and they really are soft. This is a 72 set. Also affordable pencils. I think they're around the same range as the artist and studio pencils. I'm not sure the prices now. I'm thinking of the prices that I paid at the time when I bought them, which is like, as I said, about 10 years, maybe more ago. So yeah, these pencils go on very, very smoothly. All of these three are wax based, the Color Soft, the artist and the studio pencils, but they go down really smoothly. I've used these for portraits. I've used this for animal portraits, for florals. I think I even tried portraits with it, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I've done a lot of drawings with these as well. All three of these pencils, I used them for years before I started using the polychromos or the polycolors, the other brands that I showed you at the beginning. So these are definitely pencils I would say get. I still use the Color Soft at some points when I'm doing, like for example, a watercolor piece. To add some texture and to really bring out some of the colors, I do use the Color Soft over those illustrations and drawings as well. So I put the watercolor down. Once it's dried, I go over with these pencils. So because I reserve my polychromos and my Derwent Light Fast, as well as my Caran d'Ache Illuminance and yeah, the Faber-Castell polychromos. Those ones I reserve them for more portraits that I create from beginning to end, or drawings that I do from beginning to end, for a full drawing of color pencil. But where I have mixed media like watercolor, for example, or ink or marker, the Color Soft pencils are the ones I use. So you can use these over that. That's the way I use it. But definitely these can be used for portraits or drawings that you do on its own. They can be used for that, and they go down really good, and they have a lot of coverage over the paper. Once again, it depends on the paper that you're using, but it can be used as well. Really good pencils these are. So those are the pencils that you could use if you're looking for something more cheaper. Now let's go on to my watercolor. Now the watercolors I use, this is the pencils that I use, the watercolor pencils, Derwent. Once again, I'm not, just to remind everyone, I'm not sponsored in any way. I've purchased all of these. It's just brands that were available at the art stores that I was buying it from, and it was what I could afford at the time. Or like for example, the color pencils, those are what I could afford at the time, and I was using those. It just happens to be the Derwent brand. But these are the watercolor pencils that I've also purchased a couple of years ago as well. I'm not sure if this tin is still the same tin, but it was a couple of years I purchased this. This is a set of 72 watercolor pencils. Basically, you apply the color and you just use a brush with some water and you activate the color and create those washes of watercolor. So these are the watercolor pencils that I use. I also, together with the watercolor pencils, I use watercolor paints. Let me show you the ones I use. Now, sometimes I don't use the pan sets. I go straight for the tubes, or I use the pencils. But if I'm looking at using the tube paints, I use the Montmartre watercolor paints. Now these are the little tubes. So if you see, for example, I'll show you what they look like. Yeah. This is what the watercolor tubes look like. It comes with, how many? 24. Yeah, it comes with 24 colors. So I do mix and blend my colors out, the particular colors I'm looking for, but they are really good range of colors to work with. So these are all my watercolor paints that I use for the tubes. As I said, it depends if I'm using the watercolor tubes or if I'm using the watercolor tubes, or if I'm deciding to use watercolor, my pans. Usually it's easier for me to reach for the pans than the tubes, because the tubes I need a separate palette. And sometimes I just prefer to use the pan sets instead of using the palettes, but these are the tubes when I do use the tubes of paint, of watercolor. Now the sets that I use for my pan sets, that is the The first one is the Montmartre half pen set, watercolor paints. These are the pen sets. It has 24 colors, and definitely this is a set that I use a lot. This is easy to, it's on the go if you need to use it, and it's very easy to work with. It comes with your palette, it's got all your paints in it. It comes with a water brush. I don't use a water brush that much. I do have water brushes, but I prefer to use a paintbrush. But because a water brush, sometimes too much water comes out compared to what I need. So I prefer using the brush, then I can control how much water I'm using. You can use it with the water brush and control the water flow as well. But I just prefer to use the paintbrush. As well, it comes with a little tray, maybe for blending or water you blend on the palette. Is made up of a palette on it. And it's got a sponge as well. I can show you what my one looks like. I've used it a lot. But basically, oh sorry, I haven't cleaned this out. Sorry, I'm supposed to clean this out. But anyway, this is what it looks like. And I will come through just now a little later with the brushes that I use for it. But basically, I can show you over here. This is a water brush I got by Pentel. This is a water brush by Pentel that I have got, but I've got a few of them, but I don't really use them. I prefer using brushes. Now, with the brushes for the watercolor, I have a variety of brushes. I don't specifically have a particular brand. I just look for the type of brush. It must be a soft brush. It must have a soft bristles. I usually use the flat end or the flat brushes for adding more washes. But recently I've started using bigger rounds. These are bigger round brushes. So these are helping to apply water to areas and then add color on top, or to blend the water out. These are also good. And then these ones are a little smaller round brushes to cover larger areas but still have a bit more control. These are those brushes. And then I've got little finer ones for finer details that I use when I'm painting, just to get those real small details or small areas covered with watercolors. These are the brushes I use for my watercolors. Another one that I use is the Aquafine Daler-Rowney Aquafine watercolor travel set. Now this is also a very convenient pen. As you can see, it's got a little ring at the bottom. That's just to make it easy when you're working to hold it. And then obviously you open it, and it does come with a little brush as well, but I don't use the brush. Really, I got those brushes I showed you now, so I use those when I'm doing my drawings or my paintings. But you can see it comes with a nice range of colors, and it's also got 24 colors, and definitely I use this a lot when I'm doing my watercolor paintings and drawings. I do have for all my supplies swatches made. Recently I created, especially for the watercolors and Inktense, I've got swatches made of all the colors, just to make it easier when I'm working to see the colors that I'm using. So you can do that when you are using these watercolors, but these are the watercolors pen sets that I use. Let's go through the inks that I use. So when I'm doing any illustrations or drawings for my markers or for watercolor or just plain black and white drawings or illustrations, I use the Montmartre graphic fine liners. This is a set of 7, and it comes with a brush pen. So it's got a brush pen and different nib sizes, 0.7, 0.5, 1.0, 0.3, 0.1 and 0.05. So it's got a range of different nib sizes, which is very helpful when you're trying to create different thickness of lines in your illustrations. So this is definitely one that I enjoy using. Another two that I recently purchased were the Derwent line makers. This is one in sepia and this one is in black. They come in the sizes 0.1, 0.3, 0.5 in these 3-pack sizes, 3-pack sets. These are also really good for line work and drawing. Another one that I use is the Pigma water-based pigment markers. I'm sure a lot of people know this one. This is the microns. And they also come in a range of different sizes. This is a set of 6. It comes with a 08, 03, 01, 04, 05 and 02. So this also works really good with markers, or you can do your watercolor washes, whatever you want to use it for. It works really well. The other ones that I use for my markers especially are the Copic multi-liners. I've only got the 0.03, 0.05 and 0.2. The reason, and 0.3, because I want these to be my base layer of my illustrations for my drawings that I'm going to go over with markers, because it's Copic multi-liners, they work well with your alcohol based markers. And then another ink that I've got this brush pen. Now this is the Pentel pocket brush pen, and this brush pen is, you will see, okay, so this you can see it's got quite a thick brush, and it can be used for very thick lines and very fine lines. Now I like this brush pen because it comes with 3 extra cartridges for it. One is in there, it comes with 4, it's got 1 in there, and it can be used as, you just have to have good hand control of how you handle it, and you can, depending on how you apply it, you can add thick lines or thin lines according to how you apply it. So that's definitely, this is definitely a pen that's handy to have, especially if you're creating real like a character design or illustrations or floral designs. It's a real nice ink pen to have for that. Now just a point on the pens, or before I come to that, the other ones that I use for my drawings and my paintings, I've got a couple of different ones. I've got, okay, first I've got this is a really old pen, but this is a hybrid gel white pen that you could use for some highlights on your drawings. And then I've got the famous Jelly Rolls, which is in black and in white, 0.5. That's also for fine, for adding highlights. I use the white a lot. This can be used for as illustration, but this one is just to add highlights onto my drawings. And then the other ones that I've got is the Pentel Ultra Fine Advanced liner, and this basically I can create really fine lines, but at the same time it can be used for a full illustration, but I just reserve this more for my fine lines. It can also be used for that. And the other one that I use is a Pilot G2.7. This can be also used for highlights. I don't prefer to use this all the time, but it can be used at some points if you need to add a little highlight, like maybe a sparkle in the eye in a drawing of an animal, for example. And I use these as well for and the Jelly Roll for my Inktense when I'm working with Inktense as well. And I do have a Posca a Posca pen, a white small fine one, but I haven't used it yet, so I can't give my opinion on it yet. But I have seen people using it, and it really goes on very opaque. But this one here is the Sakura Fine Point 1.0 Pen Touch. So it's also a paint pen, but it works just like paint pens. You've got to shake it up and basically get the nib to draw the ink, press it up till the ink comes out, and then you can use it to apply your colors. I use this also for basically your detail highlights and lighter areas, just to color it up, or if I made a mistake on an illustration, just use it to cover up certain areas. So this one also works really well with that. So those are basically my inking supplies. Just at the Pentel brush pen and the Derwent line makers, the black one. I did notice a few things. The Pentel brush pen does smudge when you use markers, or when you use so this one, when you use markers, it does smudge, as well as watercolors. So it has a bit of smudging with both of them. So I wouldn't advise using these for alcohol-based markers or for using it for watercolor, because it does smudge. And the other one is the Pentel Ultra Fine. This one here, it does smudge with water. It doesn't smudge with alcohol-based markers, but when using water or watercolor, it does smudge. So this one's another point just to remember. And then the Derwent line maker, this one here, it basically smudges only when you're using alcohol markers. So there's a very, very slight smudge. It could be that it didn't let the ink dry completely, but because I had no problem with the sepia one, it only did that with the black. So that could have been a problem, but just be wary of it when you are working with your pencils, with your markers and your inks and watercolors. Just test it out on a separate page, just to make sure that whichever brand of ink you're using doesn't smudge when you apply alcohol-based markers, water-based markers, or your basically watercolors. So that's just something to remember and take note of. Okay, so another thing that I like to use with inks is your regular ballpoint pens. Now I've got different ones that I use. Sometimes I even just use a pen, like for example the Pilot G207 gel pen. I sometimes just use this for a quick drawing if that's all I have. And I also use these. These are not any particular brand name. You can see it's a Papermate Ink Joy blue and black ballpoint pens. This is just to do a ballpoint pen drawing or portrait that I want to do in my sketchbook. Then I use the regular ballpoint pens. Any ballpoint pen can do for that, as well as I've got, if I want to create ones with different colors, I've got a Staedtler set of this is a set of how many? 4, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 colors in this one. So these have a variety of different colors. So if you want to create a portrait with ballpoint pen and just have a plain a drawing with color, but a normal ballpoint pen drawing, then you can use this. I often do mine with a black pen or blue, but sometimes it is nice to use a different color, so you can use these as well. So another thing I like to use with the ink is my Inktense Derwent Inktense pencils. Now this is a set of 72 Inktense pencils. Now these pencils, I use them a lot for illustrations and drawings in my sketchbook. These are basically, you apply the pencil to the paper and then you just use water with a brush to activate the ink, and that brings out the vibrancy and the saturation of the colors. So this is actually the older tin. These are really good to use for any illustration that you need to do. I am doing my animal habitat art series that I've started, where I've got 10 habitats of animals, and I do draw animals from each habitat. I'm using these Inktense pencils for all the illustrations for those pieces. So definitely these are very I enjoy using them, and I use these a lot, the Inktense, and I do a lot of drawings with these. Another one that I also add on for large coverage of areas is the Inktense blocks. Now I only have the set of 12. I don't use these as much as the pencils, but if you need to create a background with a lot of ink and a lot of color, they're easy to use because you can use them like paint. So you can either use the stick itself onto paper and then use water with a brush to activate the ink, or you can actually rub the brush. For example, you can take your brush like this. You can take your brush and you can just wet it and then rub it on here, mix your colors here and apply it to your paper. So it can be used sort of like watercolors as well. So now yeah, that's basically the Inktense. Now the brushes I use with these are actually the same brushes I use, or two of the brushes that I use with my watercolors. These are brushes from my watercolors that I use for watercolor as well. You can see these ones are actually getting worn out, but I use these a lot, and for my illustrations I'm mostly using this very fine round brush. These I think were the Rolf's Golden Nylon round brushes. I use these three for my watercolors as well as my Inktense. Let's move on to my markers. Now I don't have a variety of markers, I only have the set of markers. These are the Winsor & Newton Pro Marker Brush, or Pro Brush Marker. I'm not sure if the name has changed, but these are the ones I've got. It's a set of 48 markers, and basically it comes with a range of colors in a nice case that you can keep it in, which I really find handy when you're working with it. The names of the colors are on the caps. I do have a swatch of this as well, so that I can see what color or what it's going to look like on the paper when I'm doing my layering in for my illustrations. So these are the only markers that I've got for my alcohol-based markers. Use any mediums with my acrylic paints. All I use is water and my paint. So you can see these are the acrylic paints I use. These are the Montmartre satin acrylics. These are the acrylic paints that I use for my paintings. Yeah, these are the paints that I use, and I just have it in this little basket where it keeps them all together in this little basket. So that is my acrylic paints, and as I said, I don't use any mediums. I don't use any mediums when I'm using my acrylic paints. I only use water. And then another thing, these are my brushes for my acrylics. As you can see, it's a range of brushes. I don't have specific brands, as long as I can get some flat, different size flat brushes. Like you can see, these are some cheaper brand flat brushes that I got that I can use for applying color. And then I've got some Fulberts. You can see I've got some Fulberts that I use when I'm adding more details to my paintings. I got bigger, larger flat brushes for broad application of paint. I also got one fan brush just for adding some fine details or maybe some texture in some areas. And then I've got this mop brush that's just for blending. I use that for blending. And then I've got a range of, you can see I've got a range of, excuse the handles, these were white once upon a time. But these are just some round brushes and liner brushes, just to get some fine details or lines, strokes when I'm working. Then I've got this really tiny one, which I actually don't use that much, but yeah, there's this one. And then I've just got all these liners which I use for details in fur or details in the eyes, and basically those are the brushes I use. I don't have a variety of brushes. I do have these that I did try to use for broad application, but this one was actually too soft. You can see it moves very soft, so I didn't use that one. And then I just got this one for also applying backgrounds as well, so you can use that. Yeah, these are just a few random things I have in here. I do have a palette knife, but basically I very rarely use this unless I need to mix a lot of a particular color. Yeah, and then I've got these little sponge brushes, but I never really use them. I tried, I think, once using them with acrylics, but it just becomes a real mess to clean, and basically the paint gets stuck in the brush. But it doesn't really, unless you're doing a really thick application of acrylic. I don't really use this for my style of realistic painting. And this is just a regular Hogger brush, I think. But once again, I don't really even use this. You can see it's still white. I barely use this. I did try using it at some points for acrylic. It just doesn't work the way I work. Basically, all I need is my filbert, some flats, and some rounds, and I'm good to go for my acrylics. Now, let's go on to my oil paints. The oil paints that I use the Artist Oil Color. These are 40 ml tubes. I've got a range of different colors of these, and these are the oil paints that I use. And also use together with them, I use the Liquid Original. So I've got Liquid Original, which I use to blend or to basically mix my oil paint, just so that it increases my or speeds up the drying time, so I don't have to wait for long for it to dry. I've got my I can work on it, like if I work on a piece today, I can let it dry, and then the next day I can work on it and it will be dry. So I like my liquid. I must have liquid when I'm working with oil paints. And then I also got Liquid Fine Detail. Now this is much more of a liquid compared to the Liquid Original. That's more like a gel. So this one is, that one's still thicker. This one's more liquidy, and I use this in a little container just so that I can basically blend or add fine details. It helps to get the oil to a consistency that's perfect for very fine details. So definitely this is something that I would recommend having. Another thing to have when you are using oil paints is to have a turpentine to clean your brushes, and to also clean your brushes between colors as you're painting. So this is all the Prime Art Artist Odorless Solvent. Now the reason why I use this is because the turpentine has a real strong smell. So get to me the smell or give me headaches, then I go to using the odorless one. And this is, it doesn't matter the brand, this is only the brand that I found that's odorless, and it has doesn't have any smell, so this one doesn't really trouble. So that is a good thing to know when you are using your oil paints. When it comes to brushes for oil painting, I just have a few brushes. I don't have a variety of brushes. I do keep the brushes for my oil paints separate from the brushes for my acrylics, and I have different brushes for my watercolor. I don't mix those brushes. The ones for the watercolor I do use for gouache as well, which I will also show you just in a moment. But yeah, basically it's similar. I do have some palette knives which I've used very seldomly, but once again I've got a mop brush just for blending, and I've got some filberts. I've got some fine liner brushes, same like with the acrylics, just so that I can get some details in. And then I've got this one. It doesn't really, I tried using this for adding backgrounds. It's okay in certain instances to get really smooth blending, but because it's a bit harder, sometimes it has a lot of lines through, so I don't really use this much. This I do use sometimes for adding gesso, but it's really, it had its time with so I think that one's going out soon. But basically you can see I've got a larger filbert which I use for blending backgrounds and adding backgrounds, and larger areas. And then I've got smaller filberts and flats as well, just to add more details and cover smaller areas, and a little filbert for very fine details. And yeah, basically my liners, which I showed you previously, which I use to add details to my paintings. So those are basically my oil painting supplies. So this is the gouache paint that I use. This is the Montmartre gouache paint. It's also the 24 set. It comes with 24 colors in the tube. I do use gouache quite often as well. This is what the set looks like. You can see it's got a range of colors. Apart from this Montmartre gouache, especially when I'm working with watercolors and I want to add those really white, bright highlights, then I use, this is the Dala Designer Gouache white tube. So I use this for adding those really bright highlight areas, like you'll see in the painting I recently did of a Christmas store, and you see there's white snow coming outside, and I did that using the Dala Designer Gouache white. So this is always important to have an extra tube of white gouache, because white gouache is very opaque, so you can use it to add white details on your watercolor drawings or paintings. So these also, for these I use the same brushes as the watercolor. I don't have different brushes. So basically these brushes, apart from the 3 that I also use for Inktense, the others I use for gouache as well as watercolors. The accessory that I use is for my color pencils. This is the Zelen Artist White Odorless Spirits. I use this to blend my color pencil, and I just use these 2 filbert brushes, which I have specifically for my color pencil drawings. I use these brushes to blend in. To remove some of this from the bottle, I just have this little tub or little container that I keep. So I use this pipette just to take out some of the spirits from here and put some into the bottle, which I then use this to apply the brush in it and then blend the color pencil. That's just so that I don't basically color the rest of the spirits, because I don't want to basically color the entire bottle by dipping it in straight in there. So I just use this to dip it, and then this just prevents spilling by using this to take out a little bit. You don't need a lot. We just use very light bits of mineral spirits when you're blending color pencil. And also paper towels. Very important to have paper towels. I need paper towels for all my drawings or paintings. And then I usually, for my color pencils, I use a regular sharpener. This is a regular cheap sharpener. It's not very costly at all. It's a regular silver. You'll find them anywhere, at any stationery shop or art store, you'll find these. I use this for my color pencils because these work perfectly for my color pencils. And I can see how I'm sharpening, and then I don't have to waste a lot of the wood. I can actually just sharpen the nib if I need to. This is for my regular, this is an Adele sharpener. I use this just for my regular graphite pencils. When I'm doing my initial graphite sketches, I use this one. And then I've also used, this is the Derwent. Now I use this for my Inktense or my watercolor pencils. For Derwent, I use this. This is something I recently started using. Also a very good sharpener, and it's got 2 sizes. So you can see it's got a large size and a smaller one, which is very convenient. And then I've got the Faber-Castell sharpener. This one I use for as well. It's got 3 different sizes. It's got the large one, which I prefer to use for my water-soluble graphite because it fits perfect in there. And then your color pencils can go in, or your pencil can go into the other one. So I like that. It's also got a place where you can open it up and then you can just drop out the shavings from there. Same with this. It's got a little container which you can just remove and then drop out those shavings. And this one as well. This one can also do the same thing. It's got a little compartment there. Now, erasers that I use. This is a Faber-Castell PVC eraser that I use a lot for my pencil work, that I use a lot. I've got a Faber-Castell kneaded eraser. Any kneaded eraser will do, but I do see that the Faber-Castell one specifically lasts a long time. So that one I use a lot. I just got it in this little container just so that I can keep it from getting dried up. That's my kneaded eraser. And then I just have this little, this is a Koh-i-Noor hard matte pencil eraser. So you just sharpen it like a pencil, and then you can use it to create or erase fine areas around a drawing, or maybe add fine details or lines for highlighted areas or to lighten certain areas, or basically whiskers, maybe an area where you want to add a whisker or you forgot to add a hair, lighten it, and then you can use this as well. Other two accessories that I have is, one, it's the Lyra Rembrandt Splendor pencil. Now this one I use to basically blend my color pencil as well. You can use this. So if you don't have the mineral spirits, you can use the Splendor pencil. You get many different brands have got blending pencils for color pencils, so you can just use this. So basically it's a colorless color pencil. Finish with your drawing with color pencil, you can just use this over and it blends and covers up some of the tooth of the paper. But this must be only used on the last point of your blending, because it can damage the tooth and flatten out the tooth, and your paper won't be able to take more layers after you apply this. So that's a point to remember with this. And then I've also got, this is the Kohinoor Gioconda white chalk. Now this one is a white chalk, and basically what I use this for is to do my drawings. If, for example, I've got an acrylic painting, if I want to have a dark background, I painted a dark blue, then I can use the chalk pencil to do the drawing, and then I can see what the drawing looks like, or see the whole drawing and then start painting. You have may have seen this in some of my videos where I use the white chalk for my drawing. That's if I'm freehanding it. Now, I use a variety of sketchbooks, so I'm not going to go into the sketchbooks into detail, but I use a variety of different paper, provided that it has enough tooth. It can handle water, if it's a watercolor paper, if it can handle color pencil. It mustn't be too textured, it must be smooth. Paper, when it comes to the paper, I use this as my color pencil paper. This is the only paper I use for color pencil drawing, unless I work in my sketchbooks. That is the Prime Art Hot Press Watercolor paper. It's a 300 GSM. It's quite a thick paper. It can handle multiple layers of color pencil. It's smooth, so it doesn't have a lot of texture, but it can take multiple layers. It can hold pencil, and you can blend with solvent, and it doesn't get damaged. So this is definitely a paper I use for my color pencils. For my illustration, unless I'm using my ink sketchbook that's meant for ink, I use this for my illustrations. So this is for my inking illustrations. This is the Fabriano Bristol, what is it, 250 GM. This is for illustration, so I use this for my illustration paper. It's really smooth, so I know it's not going to damage my nibs of my ink of my pens as I'm working, so I really like this for illustration. The other one I use for charcoal. For charcoal I use, and for graphite I use the Prime, this is the Prime Art multimedia pad, and it's a 200 GSM. Now I use this only for my charcoal and my graphite. It has a bit of texture, so it can hold the graphite and the charcoal, and it's quite a thick paper. It is a 200 GSM, so it can hold, it's a thick paper, so it can hold multiple layers. But for graphite and charcoal, this is the paper I use. Now when it comes to markers, you need to make sure the paper doesn't bleed. Now I only recently found this paper that works perfectly, although this is the Shinhan Art Touch paper for bleed proof marker paper, and it is 30 sheets. This is the paper I use for my markers. Now you can see when I do small illustrations, I just cut the paper smaller. It's a very, very thin paper. It's very, very thin, and if you look at it, you'll think it's see-through, and it's not going to it's going to go through, but it doesn't. When you work on it, nothing goes through on the other side. I've done my illustrations and drawings for my marker drawings on this paper, and nothing has gone through onto the other side, and it doesn't bleed through at all. It has no bleeding whatsoever. So this is definitely a paper that works. It's very smooth, so it can apply your layers, and you can add multiple layers of marker. You may have seen me using this in my Headless Horseman drawing for Halloween this year. I've also done a marker illustration with the sunflower and a VW combi as well. You'll see I added multiple layers. I added line work with the inks or multi-liners or fine liners, and then I added the marker over multiple layers, and it can hold it, and it doesn't bleed through, and it keeps many layers on it, and that's what's a good thing. You can blend very smoothly on this paper. This is a really good paper for markers. So okay, so the last two things I'm going to mention is just two things that I use when I'm working on my drawings is tracing paper. Now the reason why I use tracing paper, this is just to keep my hands from damaging or smudging my drawings. The sheet of tracing paper you put over your drawing, and so you're working, then your hand doesn't smudge your drawing underneath. So this is an artboard trace tracing paper 90 GSM. You don't have to have the specific brand. Any tracing paper can do, or even a piece of paper. If you don't have tracing paper, a regular printer paper, just put it onto your drawing as you're drawing, so your hand rests on the paper and you don't rest on the actual drawing, because that you can either smudge it, or you can smudge your drawing, or you can actually remove some oils. If you've got lotion on your hands or anything, the oils from your skin will transfer to your drawing and it can damage your drawing. So just to prevent that, keep tracing paper under your hands when you are working. The other thing that I use is transfer paper. Now transfer paper comes in grey or in white. This is the Royal Langnickel graphite paper. It could be called graphite paper or transfer paper depending on which brand it is. But basically what this is when you're doing a drawing, it helps you to transfer the image to your main surface. So if you're doing a painting on a dark canvas and you painted the background dark blue or black, then you want to put the image on it, you can use white just to layer a sheet of this on your canvas. Do the drawing on a separate piece of paper, regular printer paper, put it on, and then just basically draw it on and draw your go over the lines of your drawing and get it onto your canvas. The white one helps you to have a lighter line on a dark background. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one, bye.